The Great Hall on Nexus Prime had never seen such desperation. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their floating chairs, their different voices creating a noise that sounded like fear itself. 3 years of war had brought them to this moment, and everyone knew they were losing. Ambassador Keth stood up slowly. His crystal-like skin caught the light as he moved, making small rainbows dance across the walls. The Altarian had lived for over 200 years, but he had never seen anything like the Vrex Empire. They were not just conquerors. They were something much worse. Council members, Keth began, his voice clear and strong. We have tried everything. Our best warriors, our strongest weapons, our smartest battle plans. Nothing works against them. Council leader Voss shifted in his massive chair. The Hegemite was 12 feet tall and covered in natural armor, but even he looked worried. His deep voice rumbled through the hall. The Vrex adapt to everything we throw at them. Every time we think we have found a weakness, they change. They become stronger. General Nex, the military commander from Altair 7, activated the main display. Images of destroyed worlds filled the air above them. Cities turned to ash. Entire populations gone without a trace. The Vrex bio-warriors moved through the scenes like living nightmares, their organic weapons growing and changing as they fought. Sector 7 fell yesterday, Nex reported. Sector 12 will fall within the week. Our forces are retreating on all fronts. We estimate 6 months before they reach the core worlds. The hall fell silent. 6 months. Some of the younger representatives started to whisper among themselves. Others just stared at the images floating above them. Keth had been thinking about this moment for weeks. There was one option they had not tried. One species they had not contacted. He had read the files, studied the reports. What he had found both fascinated and worried him. There is one species we have not asked for help, Keth said quietly. Voss turned his massive head toward the Altarian. What species? We have contacted every military power in the galaxy. The humans of Sol 3. The reaction was immediate. Laughter came from several seats. General Nex shook his head. Representative Zal from the Karathi Empire stood up, his forearms waving in disbelief. Humans. Zal's translator made his voice sound angry. They are barely out of their home system. They still use metal bullets in their weapons. They have not even built proper starships yet. Keth had expected this reaction. He had felt the same way when he first read about humans, but the more he studied them, the more he realized they might be exactly what the galaxy needed. I know how it sounds, Keth continued, but look at their history. They have been fighting wars for thousands of years, not just with other species, but with themselves. They have perfected the art of warfare in ways we cannot understand. Voss leaned forward. Explain. Keth activated his personal display. Images of human conflicts filled the space in front of him. Battles from across their history. Ancient wars fought with swords and shields. Modern conflicts with weapons that could destroy entire cities. But what caught everyone's attention were the numbers. In their last global war, they killed over 50 million of their own species in 6 years. Their weapons destroyed entire cities in seconds. They fought in every environment their planet could offer. Ocean, desert, Arctic, jungle, mountains. They adapted to everything. Representative Mora from the peaceful Zentha worlds gasped. They killed 50 million of their own kind? What kind of monsters are they? The effective kind, Keth replied simply. They understand warfare in ways we do not. While we fight to win territory or resources, they fight to completely destroy their enemies. They do not just defeat armies. They break entire civilizations. General Nex studied the human battle records. These tactics are extreme. They target supply lines, communications, civilian morale. They attack the ability to make war, not just the warriors themselves. Exactly. Keth highlighted several human military concepts. They call it total war. When humans decide to fight, they commit everything. Every resource, every citizen, every piece of technology. They do not stop until their enemy cannot fight back. The hall was quiet now. The representatives were studying the human files, and what they saw was disturbing. Humans did not just win battles. They ended wars permanently. But they are so primitive, Zal insisted. Their weapons are crude. Their ships are slow. What can they possibly do against Vrex biotechnology? Keth had been waiting for this question. He brought up the most recent human military reports. 6 months ago, a human exploration ship encountered pirates near their outer colonies. The pirates had stolen advanced weapons from 3 different species. They should have been unstoppable. The display showed the aftermath. The pirate fleet was completely destroyed. Not damaged, not scattered, destroyed. Every ship turned into floating debris. The humans used their primitive missiles to destroy ships with energy shields and plasma weapons. They studied the enemy for 2 days, found weaknesses in the shield systems, and created new tactics. Total victory in under 4 hours. Voss was reading the battle report. How is this possible? The energy shields should have stopped their primitive weapons. The humans did not try to break through the shields, Keth explained. They used the shields against themselves. They fired their missiles at asteroids, creating debris clouds that the shields could not stop. Then they used the debris to damage the shield generators. Once the shields were down, their primitive weapons worked perfectly. General Nex looked impressed despite himself. Creative thinking. They turned their weakness into an advantage. This is what humans do, Keth continued. They do not fight the way we expect. They do not follow the rules we think are important. When they see a problem, they find a solution. Any solution that works. Representative Toll from the machine worlds raised a mechanical arm. But will they help us? Why would a primitive species risk their lives for strangers? Keth smiled, though his crystal face made it look strange. Because humans love to fight. Their entire culture is built around conflict. They make games out of war. They write stories about battles. They study ancient conflicts for fun. Fighting is not something they do when they have to. It is something they do because they want to. The council members looked at each other. The idea of a species that enjoyed warfare was hard to understand. Most civilized races fought only when they had no choice. And there is something else, Keth added. Humans hate bullies. They have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. They will not let the Vrex continue their destruction if they can stop it. Voss stood up, his armor making grinding sounds. Very well. We will contact these humans. But what do we tell them? They do not know about the galactic community. They think they are alone in the universe. We tell them the truth, Keth replied. The galaxy needs soldiers. We need warriors who can fight an enemy that adapts to everything we try. We need someone who thinks differently about warfare. General Nex activated the communication systems. I will prepare the message. It will take 3 days to reach their home system. What should we offer them? Voss asked. Keth thought about everything he had learned about humans. Technology, knowledge, a place in the galactic community. But most importantly, we offer them the chance to fight an enemy that truly deserves to be destroyed. The message was sent that same day. A simple request for military assistance from a species that had never heard of the Galactic Council. The request explained the situation, offered significant rewards, and asked for whatever help Earth could provide. The reply came back faster than anyone expected. Just 2 days later, the communication array on Nexus Prime received a transmission from Sol 3. The message was short and direct, translated from the human language called English. We accept. Preparing deployment. Estimated arrival in 4 weeks. Question: do you want prisoners taken? The question confused everyone. Of course they wanted prisoners. Prisoners provided intelligence, could be used for negotiations, and proved that victory was possible. General Nex sent back a reply. Prisoners welcome for intelligence gathering. The human response came within hours. Understood. See you soon. As the council members left the Great Hall, each returning to their own worlds to prepare, none of them realized what they had actually done. They thought they had hired soldiers. They thought they had found allies who could help them fight the Virex Empire. They had no idea they had just invited something far more dangerous into their galaxy. Something that would change the meaning of warfare itself. The humans were coming, and they were very good at what they did. The ships that dropped out of hyperspace above Kepler 7 looked nothing like what the aliens expected. While most galactic vessels were smooth and elegant, built with energy fields and exotic materials, the human ships looked like they were made for war. Angular metal hulls covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They moved through space like predators, silent and deadly. General Nex stood on the observation deck of Forward Operating Base Kepler 7, watching the human transport ships descend through the planet's atmosphere. Next to him, several other alien commanders waited to meet their new allies. They had been fighting the Vrex for months on this world, losing ground every day. They look so small, commented Colonel Vrak, a Karathi officer whose forearms were crossed in skepticism. I expected something more impressive. The first transport touched down on the landing pad with a heavy thud. Steam hissed from its engines as the boarding ramp lowered. The aliens waited, curious to see what these legendary human warriors looked like. What walked out disappointed them completely. The humans were barely 6 feet tall, much shorter than most galactic species. They wore simple green uniforms and carried weapons that looked ancient, compared to energy rifles and plasma cannons. Their leader, identified by the insignia on his uniform as Colonel Taemin, approached the waiting aliens with calm confidence. General Nex? Taemin's voice was steady and professional. Colonel Taemin, 1st Human Expeditionary Force, thank you for the invitation. Nex studied the human carefully. Taemin looked young by galactic standards, probably no more than 40 Earth years. His dark eyes seemed to take in everything around him without missing any detail. Welcome to Kepler 7, Colonel. We are grateful for any assistance you can provide. Nex tried to keep the disappointment out of his voice. How many soldiers did Earth send? 5,000 in the first wave, Taemin replied. More will arrive as needed. Colonel Vrak laughed out loud. 5,000? We have been fighting with 50,000 troops and barely holding the line. What can 5,000 primitives do that 50,000 civilized soldiers cannot? Taemin's expression did not change, but several of the humans behind him smiled in a way that made the aliens uncomfortable. We will do our best, Colonel Vrak. As more humans disembarked from their ships, the alien officers watched with growing concern. These soldiers looked too relaxed, too confident. They should have been impressed by the advanced alien technology around them. Instead, they seemed to be studying everything with the cold interest of scientists examining specimens. Major So Young, the human intelligence officer, approached General Nex with a datapad in her hands. She was shorter than Colonel Taemin, with sharp eyes that seemed to see through everything they looked at. General, we need current tactical information about Vrek's positions, capabilities, and recent activities. Also, we require detailed biological data about Vrek's physiology and technology. Of course, Nex replied, leading them toward the command center. Though I should warn you, the Vreks are unlike any enemy you have faced. They adapt to everything. Their biotechnology grows and changes during battle. Interesting. So Young made notes on her pad. Do they adapt randomly or do they follow predictable patterns? The question surprised Nex. In 3 years of fighting, no one had asked about patterns in Vrek's adaptation. We have not studied it in detail. Lieutenant Sung Ho, a young human with medical insignia, looked up from his own datapad. What about their social structure? How do they communicate? Do they have leaders? Or do they operate as a collective intelligence? Again, the aliens had no good answer. They had been so focused on trying to match Vrek's firepower that they had never studied the enemy as a species. In the command center, holographic displays showed the current battle lines. Red zones marked Vrek's controlled territory, which covered most of the planet. Blue zones showed Allied positions, small islands of resistance scattered across the continents. Colonel Taemin studied the displays with his staff. Captain Hyun-sik, his senior tactical officer, pointed to several Vrek's positions. These forward bases are too exposed, Hyun-sik observed. Why have they not been attacked? We tried, General Nex explained. Every assault failed. The Vrek's bio-warriors are too strong, and their defensive structures adapt to our weapons. What kind of weapons have you used? Asked Major So Young. Everything. Energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, explosive charges, chemical agents. Nothing works for long. The humans looked at each other, and General Nex got the uncomfortable feeling they were communicating without words. It was like watching predators plan a hunt. We would like to observe a Vrek's attack, Colonel Taemin said finally. When do you expect their next assault? Tomorrow morning, replied Colonel Vrak. They attack the eastern perimeter every day at dawn. We have been retreating slowly to avoid heavy casualties. Perfect. Taemin turned to his officers. So Young, I want detailed recordings of everything. Sung Ho, focus on their biotechnology. Hyun-sik, analyze their tactics and coordination. That evening, the humans set up their own camp away from the main alien base. They did not ask for quarters or facilities. They simply created their own small fortress with equipment from their ships. The aliens watched from a distance, noting how efficiently the humans worked. Private Ji-hoon, one of the youngest humans, stood guard duty near the perimeter. He was barely 21, fresh from Earth's military academy. To him, this was his first real combat assignment, and he was both excited and nervous. Strange place, he said to Corporal Minho, who was checking their defensive sensors. Strange war. Minho replied. Did you read the files on these Vrex creatures? Ji-hoon nodded. They sound terrifying. But Colonel Taemin does not seem worried. The Colonel has fought in 7 different conflicts, Minho explained. If he is not worried, then we should not be worried either. What the aliens did not know was that the humans had spent the entire trip from Earth studying every piece of information about the Vrex Empire. While the galactic species saw an unstoppable enemy, the humans saw a puzzle to be solved. In the human command tent, Colonel Taemin reviewed reports with his senior staff. The data painted a clear picture that the aliens had somehow missed. The Vrex are not adapting randomly, So Young reported. Their changes follow biological rules. They improve existing capabilities, but they cannot create entirely new ones. It takes them time to implement changes, and they need genetic material to work with. How much time? Taemin asked. Based on the battle reports, at least 6 hours for minor adaptations, several days for major ones. Seung-ho added his own analysis. Their biotechnology is impressive, but it has limitations. It requires constant biological fuel. Cut off their supply lines and their weapons will literally starve. Captain Hyun-sik had been studying Vrex tactics. They fight like an immune system, not an army. They respond to threats, but they do not create them. They are reactive, not proactive. Taemin smiled for the first time since arriving on Kepler-7. So they are not unstoppable warriors. They are very good at defending themselves, but they do not think like soldiers. Exactly, So Young confirmed. They fight like animals. Dangerous animals, but still animals. The next morning, the humans watched from concealed positions as the Vrex attacked the eastern perimeter. The alien defenders fought bravely, using energy weapons and advanced armor. But as always, the Vrex adapted quickly, their bioweapons growing stronger with each exchange. Through his binoculars, Ji-hoon watched a Vrex bio-warrior take direct hits from a plasma rifle. The creature staggered, but its organic armor quickly thickened to absorb the energy. Within minutes, the plasma rifle was useless. Incredible, he whispered. Not really, replied Sergeant Dong-wook, who was lying next to him with a strange device in his hands. Watch this. The sergeant activated his device, which sent out a signal that the aliens could not detect. Suddenly, every Vrex bio-warrior in the area stopped what they were doing and turned toward the human positions. What did you do? Ji-hoon asked in alarm. I told them we were here, Dong-wook replied calmly. Now they will come to investigate and we can study them up close. The Vrex creatures moved across the battlefield like living nightmares. They were 8 feet tall, covered in organic armor that seemed to pulse with its own life. Their weapons were grown rather than built, extending from their arms like living extensions of their bodies. But as they approached the human positions, something unexpected happened. The humans did not run. They did not call for support. They simply waited, recording everything with devices the aliens did not recognize. When the first Vrex bio-warrior came within 50 meters, Dong-wook activated another device. The creature stopped suddenly, its bioweapon writhing in apparent pain. The other Vrex stopped as well, apparently confused by their companion's distress. Electromagnetic pulse, Dong-wook explained to Ji-hoon. Their biotechnology uses electrical signals. Disrupt the signals and their weapons stop working. The Vrex, finding their weapons useless, retreated quickly back to their lines. The entire engagement had lasted less than 5 minutes. But the humans had learned everything they needed to know. That evening, General Nex visited the human camp to ask about the day's observations. Did you learn anything useful? He asked Colonel Taemin. Yes, Taemin replied simply. We learned how to kill them. The casual way he said it made General N. The alarm sirens started screaming at 0400 hours, 3 days after the humans arrived. Emergency lights bathed the alien base in red as officers rushed to their stations. The main display showed what everyone feared most. A massive Vrex assault force moving toward the medical facility, where hundreds of wounded alien soldiers were recovering. General Nex activated the base-wide communication system. All units prepare for defensive action. Medical facility evacuation begins immediately. We will conduct a fighting withdrawal to minimize casualties. This was standard procedure. When facing a force too large to stop, the alien armies would retreat in good order, saving as many lives as possible while giving up territory. It had kept them alive for 3 years, even if it meant constantly losing ground. Colonel Taemin appeared in the command center without being summoned. He studied the tactical display showing the approaching Vrex force. over 200 bio-warriors. Enough to overrun any defensive position on the planet. General, my forces request permission to engage the enemy, Taemin said calmly. Colonel, this is not a fight we can win, Nex replied, continuing to coordinate the evacuation. The smart move is to fall back and preserve our forces. We did not come here to fall back, Taemin stated. We came here to solve your Vrex problem. General Nex stopped what he was doing and looked at the human commander. Colonel, that force has over 200 bio-warriors. You have barely 100 soldiers in position. This is suicide. No, General. This is an opportunity. Before Nex could respond, Taemin was already giving orders to his own forces through his communication device. The instructions were brief and in the human language, but the tone made every alien in the command center nervous. On the eastern perimeter, Sergeant Dong-wook received his orders and smiled. His squad of 12 humans was positioned in what the aliens considered the most dangerous section of the base. This was where the Vrex always attacked first, where they hit hardest. You heard the colonel, Dong-wook told his soldiers. Standard urban elimination protocol. Minho, start with the infrastructure. Young-hee, I want psychological profiles on their leaders. Ji-hoon, you are with me. Private Ji-hoon checked his weapon nervously. Unlike the energy rifles carried by alien soldiers, the humans used what they called kinetic weapons. Metal bullets fired by chemical explosions. The aliens thought such weapons were primitive, but Ji-hoon had trained with them his entire life. Sergeant, there are so many of them, Ji-hoon observed, watching the Vrex force approach through his scope. Good, Dong-wook replied. More targets means more opportunities. The first Vrex bio-warriors reached the perimeter at 0430 hours. They moved like living tanks, their organic armor pulsing with bioelectrical energy. Their weapons grew from their arms like extensions of their bodies, ready to adapt to whatever resistance they met. The alien forces began their planned withdrawal, falling back in organized lines while providing covering fire. Their energy weapons lit up the early morning darkness, creating a light show that could be seen from orbit. The humans did something completely different. They disappeared. One moment, the Vrex could see human positions on their biosensors. The next moment, the humans were gone. No energy signatures, no movement, no trace. It was as if they had simply vanished from existence. The Vrex bio-warriors, programmed to attack visible threats, found themselves confused. Their organic sensors told them enemies were nearby, but they could see nothing to fight. They moved forward cautiously, spreading out to search for the missing humans. That was exactly what Sergeant Dong-wook wanted them to do. The first Vrex bio-warrior died quietly. It was investigating what looked like an abandoned human position when something struck it from behind. Not an energy weapon that it could adapt to, but a simple metal blade that severed the bioelectrical connections in its neck. The creature dropped silently, its organic weapon writhing uselessly as it died. Private Ji-hoon, hidden in a drainage pipe 50 meters away, watched through his scope as Dong-wook emerged from nowhere, killed the bio-warrior and disappeared again. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds. How did he do that? Ji-hoon whispered into his communication device. Camouflage and patience, came the reply from Corporal Minho, who was somewhere in the industrial complex. The Vrexian bioelectrical patterns. Block the patterns and you become invisible. More Vrex died in the next few minutes, not from massive explosions or energy weapon duels, but from precise strikes that shut down their biological systems. The humans moved through the shadows like ghosts, appearing just long enough to kill before vanishing again. The Vrex began to adapt, as they always did. Their organic sensors grew more sensitive, their armor thickened, their bioweapons became more aggressive. But they were adapting to an enemy that was no longer there. Lieutenant Minho had been busy while the others hunted individual bio-warriors. As an engineer, he understood how the industrial complex worked. More importantly, he understood how to make it work for the humans instead of against them. The first trap activated when a group of Vrex bio-warriors entered the main processing facility. Steam pipes that had been rerouted by Minho suddenly burst, filling the area with superheated vapor. The bio-warriors' organic armor, designed to absorb energy weapons, offered no protection against simple heat and pressure. The Vrex that survived the steam found themselves in a maze of electrified corridors. Minho had connected the facility's power grid to every metal surface in the building. The bio-warriors' own electrical systems made them perfect conductors. turning their strengths into weaknesses. Beautiful work. Dongwook reported over the communication channel as he watched Vrek's bio-warriors convulse and die from their own bioelectricity. But the most disturbing part of the human operation was not the killing. It was what happened to the Vreks they captured alive. Young He had been waiting for this opportunity since arriving on Kepler-7. As the unit's psychological operations specialist, she had studied every available record of Vrek's behavior. She knew things about their species that the aliens had never bothered to learn. When 3 injured Vrek's bio-warriors were trapped in a collapsed section of the facility, Young He was the first to reach them. The aliens expected her to either kill the creatures or call for support. Instead, she sat down next to them and began to speak. Not in the galactic common language, but in sounds that the bio-warriors seemed to understand. Clicks and whistles that made their organic armor relax and their weapons retract. Young He had decoded their basic communication patterns from captured audio recordings. Within an hour, she had done something that no alien interrogator had managed in 3 years of war. She made the Vreks talk. The information was devastating. The Vreks were not just an empire of bio-warriors. They were a biological weapon created by another species, one that had lost control of their creation centuries ago. Every world they conquered was stripped of biological material to create more bio-warriors. There were no Vreks civilians, no Vreks cities, no Vreks culture, only the endless hunger for biological resources. But most importantly, Young He learned about their weakness. The bio-warriors were connected to central hive minds that coordinated their actions. Destroy the hive minds, and the entire Vreks military would collapse like a body without a brain. The battle for the medical facility ended at 0600 hours. In just 2 hours, a force of 12 humans had eliminated over 200 Vreks bio-warriors. Not a single human had been injured. Not a single piece of human equipment had been damaged. General Nex found Colonel Taemin calmly reviewing after-action reports in the ruins of the industrial complex. Around them, human soldiers were cataloging Vreks technology with the methodical precision of scientists. How, was all Nex could manage to say. The Vreks are not soldiers, Taemin replied without looking up from his datapad. They are biological machines designed to fight other biological machines. We are not biological machines, General. We are something they were never designed to handle. But their adaptations work perfectly against energy weapons, biotechnology, and conventional tactics, Taemin interrupted. They do not work against simple tools used in unexpected ways. They cannot adapt to steam pipes, electrical current, and gravity because those are not weapons. They are environmental factors. Nex looked around at the carnage. Every Vreks bio-warrior had been killed or captured with surgical precision. Their organic weapons had been carefully removed and were being studied by human technicians. What about the prisoners? Nex asked. Processed, Taemin replied simply. Processed? We extracted all useful information from them. Military organization, command structure, biological vulnerabilities, production methods. Everything we need to eliminate the rest of their species. The casual way Taemin said eliminate made Nex feel cold. You mean defeat them, of course. Taemin finally looked up from his datapad. His dark eyes showed no emotion at all. No, General. I mean eliminate them. The Vreks are not a species in the traditional sense. They are a biological weapon that has spread beyond its original purpose. They cannot be negotiated with, cannot be contained, and cannot be reformed. They can only be eliminated. But surely some could be. General, Taemin interrupted gently. What do you do when a computer visio? News of the human victory at Kepler-7 spread through both armies faster than official reports could travel. Across the galaxy, Vreks bio-warriors began to encounter an enemy unlike anything in their vast biological memory. The creatures that had terrorized civilized worlds for 3 years suddenly found themselves being hunted by something they could not understand or adapt to quickly enough. Captain, Nari led the first deep reconnaissance mission into Vreks-controlled space 2 weeks after the medical facility battle. Her stealth ship, designed by human engineers using principles the aliens had never considered, slipped through Vreks sensor networks like a ghost through walls. The mission was supposed to gather intelligence about Vreks supply lines and command structures. What Nari discovered changed everything about how the humans viewed their enemy. She had been observing the Vreks-controlled world of Talos 4 for 3 days when she noticed something wrong. The planet should have been a thriving Vreks colony, covered with bio-industrial complexes and warrior breeding facilities. Instead, her long-range sensors showed a dead world, stripped of all biological matter down to the bacterial level. "This does not make sense," reported Corporal Sungmin, her sensor operator. "According to alien intelligence, this world was conquered 8 months ago. There should be millions of wrecks here." Nari studied the data carefully. The planet's surface was bare rock and metal, completely lifeless. But her sensors detected massive underground facilities still active and consuming enormous amounts of energy. "Take us down," she ordered. "I want to see what they are doing down there." The underground complex was a nightmare of biological engineering. Massive machines that looked more grown than built processed organic matter on an industrial scale. Conveyor systems moved biological slurry through pipes that pulsed like living arteries. The air itself was thick with the smell of digestion and decay, but there were no Vrex biowarriors anywhere to be seen. "Where are they?" Sungmin whispered as they moved through the empty corridors. Nari found the answer in the central processing chamber. The room was filled with thousands of cocoon-like structures, each one pulsing with its own internal light. Inside each cocoon, something was growing. Something that had once been alive but was being transformed into something else entirely. The recording devices in Nari's equipment captured everything. The systematic processing of organic matter, the transformation of living beings into raw materials, the industrial-scale production of biowarriors from the biological matter of entire worlds. "My God," Sungmin breathed, understanding what they were seeing. "They are not conquerors. They are harvesters." Nari activated her emergency communication system, sending a coded burst transmission directly to human command. The data was too important to wait for regular intelligence channels. The transmission reached Earth's military headquarters within hours. General In-Ae, the supreme commander of human military forces, reviewed Nari's findings with her senior staff in a secure conference room deep beneath Seoul. "Confirm this data," she ordered her intelligence chief. "Already confirmed, General." Cross-referenced with battle reports from 17 different worlds. Every planet the Vrex have conquered shows the same pattern. Total biological strip mining followed by conversion to biowarrior production facilities. General In-Ae studied the holographic displays showing Vrex-controlled territory. Hundreds of worlds, each one now a lifeless factory producing more biowarriors to consume more worlds. The scale was staggering. "How many people?" she asked quietly. "Conservative estimate? 200 billion sentient beings have been processed in the last 3 years. Possibly more." The room fell silent. Even for humans who had seen the worst of warfare throughout their history, the numbers were difficult to comprehend. 200 billion people reduced to biological raw materials for an industrial process. "This changes our operational parameters," General In-Ae announced. "Send new orders to all human forces. Authorization code Omega-7. Her staff recognized the code immediately. Omega-7 meant total war, not against an enemy army or government, but against an entire biological system that needed to be completely destroyed. On Kepler-7, Colonel Taemin received the new orders while reviewing plans for the next phase of operations. Major So Young found him in his command tent an hour later, staring at his communication device with an expression she had never seen before. "Sir?" she asked carefully. "The mission parameters have changed," Taemin said quietly. "We are no longer fighting an enemy army. We are exterminating a biological infestation." So Young read the intelligence reports from Nari's mission. The systematic harvesting of entire populations, the industrial conversion of living beings into weapons. The scale of the genocide was beyond anything in recorded history. "What are our new orders?" she asked. "Complete elimination of all Vrex biological systems. No prisoners except for intelligence gathering. No negotiation. No mercy." Taemin looked up at his intelligence officer. "We are now conducting pest control on a galactic scale." The change in human behavior was immediate and absolute. Soldiers who had been professional but restrained became something colder, more focused. The aliens noticed it first in the way humans spoke about their enemy. Before, they had referred to the Vrex as hostiles or enemy forces. Now they called them targets or infestations. Sergeant Kyung-ho's squad began leaving small metal tags at the sites of their operations. The tags were inscribed with Korean characters that the alien translation computers could not properly interpret. When asked about them, Kyung-ho simply said they meant processed in his language. But the real change came in how the humans fought their battles. Lieutenant Sung-ho, the unit's biological specialist, had been working on something in his field laboratory for weeks. Using samples of Vrex biotechnology captured from previous battles, he had been developing what he called selective biological agents. The Vrex biotechnology depends on specific genetic sequences, he explained to Colonel Taymin. Disrupt those sequences and their weapons stop functioning. Disrupt them completely and the bio-warriors themselves stop functioning. A biological weapon? Taymin asked. A very specific biological weapon, Sung-Ho confirmed, designed to target only Vrex genetic material, harmless to every other form of life in the galaxy. The aliens were horrified when they learned about the human bioweapon project. Biological warfare was considered the most terrible form of combat, banned by every civilized species for thousands of years. General Nex confronted Colonel Taymin in the command center. Colonel, you cannot use biological weapons. It violates every treaty, every principle of civilized warfare. General, Taymin replied calmly, the Vrex are not a civilized species. They are a biological weapon that has gotten out of control. We are simply using the appropriate tools to stop them. But the precedent has already been set, Taymin interrupted. The Vrex have been using biological warfare against the entire galaxy for 3 years. They have processed 200 billion sentient beings into raw materials. We are simply returning the favor. The test of Sung-Ho's bioweapon came when a Vrex assault force attacked a human outpost near the planet's equator. Instead of fighting the bio-warriors directly, the humans released aerosol canisters containing the biological agent. The effect was immediate and absolute. Every Vrex bio-warrior in the area simply stopped functioning. Their organic weapons dissolved, their armor cracked and fell away, and the creatures themselves collapsed as their biological systems shut down one by one. But the humans did not stop there. They had also developed delivery systems that could spread the bioweapon over vast areas, atmospheric processors that could contaminate entire continents, orbital deployment systems that could sterilize whole planets, industrial-scale production facilities that could manufacture enough bioweapon to eliminate every Vrex in the galaxy. Private Ji-hoon watched the construction of the first production facility with growing unease. The humans were building something that could destroy an entire species, and they were doing it with the same calm efficiency they brought to every other task. Does this not bother you? He asked Corporal Minho as they supervised the installation of bioweapon manufacturing equipment. What should bother me? Minho replied. The Vrex process 200 billion people into weapons. We are processing them into nothing. It seems fair. But we are talking about genocide. No, Minho corrected. Genocide is what the Vrex did to those 200 billion people. What we are doing is extermination. Like killing rats that have infested a building. The alien commanders watched the human preparations with growing alarm. They had asked for soldiers to help fight the Vrex. Instead, they had received something that was systematically planning the complete destruction of their enemy. This is madness, General Nex told Colonel Taymin during one of their daily briefings. You are talking about eliminating an entire species from existence. Yes, Taymin agreed. That is exactly what we are talking about. But surely some of them could be what, General? Reformed, educated, converted to peaceful purposes? Taymin activated a holographic display showing Vrex biowarrior anatomy. Look at them, General. Really look at them. They have no culture, no society, no individual identity. They are biological machines designed for one purpose, to consume living beings. And the final phase of what humans called Operation Clean Sweep began 6 months after their arrival in the galaxy. What had started as a request for military assistance had become something the alien species could never have imagined. The systematic elimination of an entire biological system from existence. Colonel Yoonji stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her crisp uniform and calm demeanor making her appear more like a scientist giving a lecture than a military officer, reporting on the greatest extermination campaign in galactic history. Council members, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. I am here to provide an update on human military operations against the Vrex biological system. The terms she used made several council members uncomfortable. The humans no longer called it a war or even a conflict. To them, it had become a biological system cleanup operation, conducted with industrial precision. All primary Vrex production facilities have been neutralized, Yoonji continued. activating a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Red zones that had once marked Vrex-controlled territory were now marked in gray. Neutralized, eliminated, gone. How many? Asked Ambassador Keth, his crystal-like voice barely above a whisper. Conservative estimate, 847 billion individual bio-warriors and associated biotechnology eliminated. Production capacity reduced to 0. Reproductive capability eliminated. No remaining viable populations detected. The numbers were so large they lost all meaning. The Vrex Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years, had been erased from existence in 6 months. Not defeated, not contained, not driven back, eliminated. What about prisoners? Asked Council Leader Voss. Surely some were taken for study, for possible rehabilitation? Yunji's expression did not change. No prisoners were taken beyond those required for intelligence gathering. All captured specimens were processed after data extraction was complete. The way she said processed made everyone in the chamber understand what had happened to any Vrex that survived. Initial contact with human forces. General Nex, attending the session via quantum relay from his command post, spoke up from the communication array. Colonel, could you explain to the Council what you mean by processed? Certainly, General. Captured Vrex bio-warriors were subjected to complete biological analysis to understand their systems and weaknesses. Once all useful intelligence was extracted, they were terminated to prevent any possibility of escape or reproduction. Representative Mora from the Zentha world stood up, her tentacles writhing in distress. You killed prisoners of war? That violates every civilized law of warfare. No, Representative, Yunji replied calmly. We eliminated biological weapons that happened to be sentient. There is a difference. The distinction was lost on most of the alien representatives, but it was crucial to understanding how humans had approached the entire campaign. They had never seen the Vrex as soldiers to be fought or even enemies to be defeated. They had classified them as a biological infestation to be eliminated. Could you describe the final operation for the Council? Asked Keth, though his voice suggested he was not sure he wanted to hear the answer. Yunji nodded and changed the holographic display to show the Vrex fortress world of Thakmor. The planet had been the heart of the Vrex Empire, protected by billions of bio-warriors, and considered completely impregnable by conventional forces. Thakmor represented the largest concentration of Vrex biotechnology in the galaxy, Yunji explained. Traditional military doctrine would have required multiple fleets and millions of soldiers to assault the planet. Estimated casualties for such an operation were in the hundreds of millions. The display showed tactical analyses prepared by various alien military commands. Every simulation ended the same way: massive casualties and questionable success rates. The human approach was different, Yunji continued. Captain Wansik volunteered for a single-ship infiltration mission. The holographic display showed a small human stealth vessel approaching Thakmor. Unlike the massive battle fleets the aliens would have used, the human ship was barely larger than a shuttle. Captain Wansik's mission was to deliver a single payload to the planet's core. Not an explosive device, but a biological agent specifically designed for Vrex physiology. What appeared on the display next would haunt the dreams of every alien representative for years to come. The biological agent, based on research conducted on captured Vrex specimens, was designed to unravel the genetic bonds that held Vrex biotechnology together. The agent was introduced into the planet's bioelectrical grid at 1400 hours, standard galactic time, Yunji reported with the same tone she might use to describe a routine maintenance procedure. Complete biological system failure was achieved within 72 hours. The display showed time-lapse images of Thakmor during those 72 hours. The planet's surface, once covered with pulsing bio-industrial complexes, gradually went dark as the biological agent spread through every connected system. Massive bio-warriors simply collapsed as their internal systems failed. Organic weapons dissolved into harmless organic matter. Living buildings crumbled as their biological supports died. What about the Vrex themselves? Asked General Nex, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Complete biological shutdown occurred in all observed specimens, Yunji replied. No survivors detected. No viable genetic material remaining. The biological agent was designed to eliminate all traces of Vrex genetics to prevent any possibility of regeneration. The chamber fell completely silent. The alien representatives were trying to comprehend what they had just heard. An entire planet home to billions of bio-warriors had been sterilized by a single human carrying a biological weapon. The payload was delivered successfully? Asked Voss. Captain Wansik completed his mission and returned to base without incident, Yunji confirmed. Total human casualties for the Thakmor operation: 0. Representative Zal from the Karathi Empire stood up, all 4 of his arms trembling. You destroyed an entire world with 1 ship and 1 soldier? We eliminated a biological infestation with appropriate tools and minimal resource expenditure, Yunji corrected. Thakmor itself is undamaged and ready for recolonization once the biological contamination is cleared. The term biological contamination, referring to what had once been the most feared empire in the galaxy, made several representatives physically ill. What about other Vrex populations? Asked Ambassador Keth. Surely some survived on other worlds. Yunji changed the display to show the entire galaxy. Every former Vrex position was marked with the same gray indicator: neutralized, eliminated, gone. Simultaneous operations were conducted on all identified Vrex positions, she reported. Total elapsed time for complete biological system elimination: 6 days, 14 hours, 37 minutes. The scale of the operation was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. In less than a week, the humans had eliminated every trace of an empire that had taken 3 years to build and had seemed unstoppable just months before. How many humans were involved in the final operation? Asked General Nex. Total human personnel deployed for Operation Clean Sweep: 12,000 soldiers, 47 ships, and associated support equipment. 12,000 humans had accomplished what the combined might of the Galactic Alliance could not achieve with millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. But more than that, they had done it with such efficiency that the war crimes tribunals that would normally follow such an operation seemed pointless. There was nothing left to prosecute, and now, asked Voss. What do the humans do now that the Vrex are gone? Yunji smiled for the first time during her presentation, but it was not a warm expression. Now we go home, Council Leader. The pest control operation is complete. The galaxy is safe. She deactivated the holographic display and gathered her datapads. Unless, of course, you discover any other biological infestations that require professional attention. As Colonel Yunji left the chamber, the alien representatives sat in stunned silence. They had achieved what they thought was impossible: the complete elimination of the Vrex threat. But the cost of that victory was the knowledge that something even more dangerous than the Vrex now existed in their galaxy: the humans. On the transport ships carrying human forces back to Earth, soldiers reflected on what they had accomplished. Private Ji-hoon, now a veteran of 17 separate elimination operations, sat with his squad in the ship's common area. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked Corporal Minho, who was reading a technical manual about bioweapon containment procedures. We solved the problem we were asked to solve, Minho replied without looking up. The Vrex were processing entire populations into weapons. Now they are not. But the way we did it was efficient, thorough, and permanent, Sergeant Dongwook added, joining the conversation. The aliens wanted the Vrex threat eliminated. We eliminated it. On the bridge of the flagship, Colonel Taemin reviewed the final casualty reports with his staff. Human losses for the entire campaign: 247 soldiers, mostly from equipment failures and accidents. Vrex losses: every member of their species and all associated biotechnology. Mission accomplished, reported Major So-young, Phil,